My name is Alex McCulloch. I am a director of the property team at CACI, and I also head up innovation. I've been working in data and consumer research for my entire career. I started off, always been consultancy side, started off working with retailers, been working with property companies for the last 15 years, probably about 20 years in total. I don't want to keep too much of a count on it though. The last 25 years have just been totally transformational in terms of how consumer insights have worked and what you can find out. So when I first started out, it was literally a case that we used to have to code things using DOS, and that was how we used to do programming and coding. I'm now leading a team who are looking at using AI to do predictive analytics on huge volumes of data sets. So the shift that's really taken place has been in the data space. It's been in the level of insight we can derive and what we can understand about people. But what's really been striking is that the questions being asked haven't changed. So whilst the way in which we can answer them is completely transformed, the data is transformed, fundamentally people still need to know the same things. Who are my customers? Where do they come from? How much do they spend? And how do I get more of them? And ultimately, how do I communicate with them and unlock them? I think one of the most exciting trends we've seen coming down the line, certainly post-COVID, has been a shift in what people use spaces for. So if you went back before COVID, you used to see an awful lot of, you'd go to your big regional mall for your big destination, that's what you do list shopping. What we've seen since then is places really change the shape of what they are. So we're seeing a lot more different reasons for visiting. You're seeing community things such as NHS clinics and so on coming into those in-town shopping centres, creating, almost going back to sort of your 19th century medieval high street type thing, in the sense that everything in a community is in that focal point. Equally, those big destinations have become sort of leisure palaces where you go to for a full day out. So yes, you do shopping, but you also go for a destination restaurant or for a big department store, but also for the leisure aspects as well. And so that shift in terms of places being, places becoming areas you want to spend time in, I think is the big change. It's not function driven, it's now desire driven. I mean, one of the biggest shifts I think I've seen in my time is the evolution of customer segmentation. So if I think about our world, we've been building Acorn as a product for the last 30 years, 40 years. And in that time, it's always been a postcode level classification. And the old, the acronym is a classification of residential neighborhoods. It describes people who live in a location. But if I look at the latest build of it, we built that using neural networks, using a whole AI model that was integrating vast quantities of data to build out a really holistic view of who the customer is, but you've grounded it all in data. And we've now got the ability to take that approach to Acorn, which is describing everyone for everyone, every single person for all of our clients, and actually then tweak it and manipulate it and make it client specific. So if you have a customer database which has got a load of records in it and you know a few things about them, we can take that as a starting point and we can build on it and create bespoke segmentations, borderline on the fly, which then in turn connects back to the national picture. So what it basically allows you to do is to be hyper-focused in your targeting and to be really nailed on in who is it I'm talking to, what is their value to me, and actually how exactly do I get them to respond to me. I mean, when I think of where the true innovation has come, particularly in the data analytics space, it's hard to look past the use of mobile data, mobility data, to understand who is in a location, and banking data in terms of who's spending that location. And the reason why that's so key is to get those data points in the past. We used to have to speak to people, and we'd put people on the ground for 2 weeks, and we'd speak to maybe 1,000 people to get that information. We'd have to build out from there. I can now go to a mall, any of the big regional malls, anywhere, and understand what all the spend looks like and what all the people look like. Which means if I'm then putting people on the ground, fieldwork teams, I can use them to actually ask open-ended questions. And so my 1,000 sample becomes a focus group because I can use natural language analytics to understand sentiment and what they really mean and what they're thinking. And so that's how we're leveraging AI into the shopping space to basically say, here's the big data that tells us what's happening, here's what people are thinking, and how do we connect the two together. So ESG has obviously been talked about a lot, and I think it's a really interesting one because when we talk about ESG, we have a real tendency to zero in on the E. And that's where there's an awful lot of metrics and systems and so on which allow us to measure what those environmental impacts are. But where I think the really interesting bit is actually the S. Because yes, there's BREM and all those sort of metrics of what's my carbon capture and so on. And that's great, we can quantify that and we should all be doing better and carry on doing that. But on the social side, we've started building out a objective score which allows you to measure what the impact is on the ground of your assets. So we can start saying, you want to build an extension and the community is pushing you in order to, or the council's pushing you to say, okay, we need a new school. Well, we can actually quantify that and say, actually, what this community really needs is green space. That's what you're short on. And so we're now in a place where we can start measuring that. And that's where I think the next interesting area is what's my social impact, not just my environmental impact. If I had to bet, I'm always going to go thriving. Retail is going to thrive because it evolves, it adapts, and it always has done. We were doing a piece recently where we were looking at the health and beauty sector. And you think about how that's evolved. It was all in department stores, in the ground floor. Department stores went bust. All the brands took out their own individual units and started speaking direct to customers. Customers want comparison shops, so suddenly we see the rise of Space NK, Sephora, Superdrug invest in their stores, Boots invest in their stores, and we've effectively gone full circle back to a market hall, but it's now just beauty specific. Retail always finds a way. Fundamentally, we're a nation of innovators, and we will find a way to innovate and deliver. I think about who uses data and insights effectively. I'm thinking specifically about a retail brand. One of my favourites is actually a brand called Folk. They do an awful lot in menswear and increasingly doing women's wear. And the reason I like them is they do things where they actually target their messages to you based on what your recent engagement is. So if I'm on their website and I'm browsing and I look at a couple of things and I maybe load one into my basket but I don't commit, I'll get a follow-up email giving me a discount. Equally, if I'm returning an item, they will give me a discount code to get more money off my future purchase. So let's say I'm returning an item that's worth £100, they will give me £10 off my next purchase on basis of me returning it. So yes, I'm paying for the return, but I'm getting something back from it, and I'm actually then spending my credit on a future purchase. So it's a really clever model to hook those sort of instincts you have for, I'll buy in return, into actually committing your spend to the brand. It's very clever, it's very natural.